said, are Shias considered Muslim? Is it haram to call them kuffar?
Bismillah. Question is, are Shiites considered Muslims? And is it haram to call them kuffar, etc.? It's a very important question. And whether we like it or not, whether you like it or not, whether you believe it or not, there's going to be interactions between Shiite Muslims and Sunni Muslims on all levels of interaction, from business to etc. Can you eat at the restaurants, etc., etc., etc.? There's no doubt about that. So it's an important question. I would say, in brief, the Shia are of different sects. They are of different groups, different schisms, different denominations. You can't broad brush all of them all of the time. Like any other group in history or any other denomination. There are those at the top, those at the bottom, those in the middle. There are those that are fanatical, and there are those who have fundamental, necessary, absolutely necessary beliefs which clash and collide directly with the teachings of the Quran and the Sunnah. That part of the answer is clear. And there are those from the Shia who don't necessarily have those beliefs which directly clash and collide with the text of Quran and the Sunnah. There could be a doubt, a false or baseless interpretation, let alone the general 9 to 5 laymen from among them who are sincere and think and feel that they're following Islam. And Allah is talking about Ali and Hassan and Hussein here. And Allah said this to Jibreel, etc. So it depends. It depends. Even though when we talk about the evolution and the chronological history of Shiism or Rafida, and how many things which were optional back then, which were of a certain denomination back then, have become standard for today. All right? And it depends on where they live and where they grew up and what access and knowledge they had or what knowledge they had access to. All right? And the different types of kufr. All right? And from that type of kufr is kufr al-i'rad or kufr al-iba', is refusing and turning away. وَالَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا عَمَّا أُنذِرُوا مُعْرِضُونَ. Allah says, in the disbelievers, the faith rejectors, they turn away from that which they're warned with. عَمَّا أُنذِرُوا يعني عَمَّا أُنذِرُوا بِهِ. Their access to the wahi. Muhammad ﷺ was right there. He was their cousin, nephew, etc. He was right there with them. They had access to it, and they turned away. It's not like the same as someone who didn't have access. Someone who grew up thinking and feeling that he was sincerely is different levels, different types. So it's a yes and a no answer depending on the denomination, depending on where they live and how they grew up. Wallahu alam. And as far as the general concept of kufr and takfir, is that if a person is upon a creed of kufr, sarih, something which is frank, clear kufr, then they're kuffar outwardly. Inwardly, Allahu alam, did they have an excuse? Kada, maybe Allahu alam, but zahiran, outwardly, clear kufr is clear kufr. And those who believe and accept and profess that are outwardly considered to us kuffar. And only Allah knows what's on the inside, what's behind the scene, in the hearts. Allahu alam, Allahu alam.
One of the sisters had a question in the matters of salah. She said, is it obligatory to recite Fatiha to yourself after the imam recites a salah?
Pardon. Is it obligatory to recite the Fatiha to yourself behind the imam? The safest thing to do is that when you're praying behind an imam and you can hear him reciting, meaning Jumu'ah, Fajr, Eid, Maghrib, recite the Fatiha. That's the safest thing to do. Avoid the difference of opinion of the ulama. And many scholars say that he who does not recite the Fatiha behind the imam has no prayer. As far as the silent prayers, then of course you're going to recite the Fatiha and inshallah an additional surah. But in the prayers that are recited aloud, Maghrib, Jumu'ah, Eid, Fajr, you're going to, inshallah, at least recite the Fatiha to be on the safe side. And there's a long discussion among the people of knowledge on what you can and cannot, and what you should and should not recite behind the imam. But we, nufti bil ahwat. The safest thing to do, huh? Al-ahwat, sah?
No.
Wallahu alam. La shak.
Inshallah, we'll take just 2 or 3 more questions. One of the sisters asked, if a non-mahram touches you, does it break your wudu? Explain.
I think this question came earlier or last night. Last night, if a non-mahram touches you, does it break your wudu? No, it doesn't break your wudu unless something else happens. A woman touches you, a man touches you, and you become excited and aroused. That's a different story. You know, something exits your body because of that arousal, because of someone touching you. But someone just touching you accidentally or intentionally. You shake someone's hand, a hug or a kiss, whatever it was. If nothing else happens or takes place, it does not necessarily break the wudu. And of course, like the previous question, there's a long discussion among the people of knowledge with regards to touching the opposite sex and is the wudu broken. Safest to make wudu, to avoid the difference of opinion, but there needs to be a dalil, especially for this question. A non-mahram man touching a woman, does it break her wudu? There's no dalil for that. There's no proof for that. Wallahu ta'ala alam.
One of the brothers asked, if you're a traveler and you miss salah, but you're back in your home, can you combine the salah since when the salah came, you were a traveler? Or do you need to pray the full salah?
Person's traveling. They missed the prayer when they were traveling?
You're traveling, you miss salah, but you're back in your
Now you're back home at your home. Can you bind the salah, so on and so? Well, if you missed the prayer, you don't have no choice but to make up the prayer. But when you're back home, there is no more combining the salah and shortening the salah. Okay, you have to make the prayer in its proper time with its proper length, unless there's an excuse such as sickness, irregular menstrual bleeding, etc., etc., etc. Okay, but once you've missed the salah, you've missed the salah. You got to make it up. So if it's time for asr, you have to make the dhuhr. You have to make the asr, etc. What's important is when you're traveling, try your best to prioritize, and the prayer should be number 1, as Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu said, right? When he wrote to the governors, he says, "Inna ahamma a'malikum indi salah." Collecting taxes, flogging the drunkard, protecting the thugur, etc. The most important of your tasks to me is prayer. That's at the top of your job description, establishing the prayer, enforcing the prayer, leading the people in the prayer. So when you're traveling, the prayer should be the most important, top priority on your mind. When I'm going to pray, where I'm going to pray, how I'm going to pray. On a plane, on a train, sitting, standing, I got my prayer rug, wudu. Do I have to keep my wudu? I'm in a different time zone. Rather, you're going to plan where you're going to be in 3 hours. If you're traveling from the United States to go make Hajj or Umrah, you have to calculate what time is Fajr going to be, Eastern time, Atlantic. You got to, because the prayer is everything. That's the vertebrae of your religion. And obviously, if somebody breaks your back, there's not much you can do afterwards. Wallahu ta'ala alam.
Question that was asked while the Roots of Knowledge class was going on. This might be about like lineage. There was a system that had a change of organs.
Like the transition?
Transition, yes.
Like the gender?
Transgender, yes.
Okay.
And then once they became, the opposite gender, they married another person, and then they had Toba and everything, but they were still male. Still had the male parts and everything, and they ended up having a kid. Some way, somehow, 2 years in, like 2 kids later, they ended up, telling the person, their partner, hey, I used to be this, I used to be that. How do do you go about that child, the lineage, and all that, the inheritance, and all that? I know that's a very, that was a question that was asked. and
طيب لا
I
بأس
asked some.
لا بأس
No.
الله المستعان.
I almost want. Why do you need the answer to that question? Then? I know, but I mean, is anybody planning on transitioning out here? Like, unless you know that person. But know that that's not real, though. Understand that them being inseminating another person because that's not possible. It might have been through, you know what I'm saying, artificial insemination, but they don't produce, you know what I'm saying. But you know.
أخي الاستحالة ها. At the end of the day, يعني questions like this, no doubt, this is a real life question, and this is a majorly hot topic. Transgender, sex changes, etc. is real. At the end of the day, may Allah protect us all. I mean, so I don't know what to say. He, she, or it. They had a child. You had 2 children. MashaAllah. If it had children, then hey, it had children. Khalas. What are you going to say, right? However it was done, you're claiming that it had children.
Some way, somehow, but I don't like.
Then I guess it's a walida somehow. A mother of children, somehow, some way. Allah musta'an. Ameen.
Yeah.
What's the permissibility of participating in voting? And what is and about the belief of voting for the lesser of 2 evils and such?
Can you vote? What's the permissibility of voting? Some scholars have differed and argued on the permissibility and impermissibility of voting in the Middle East and the lands of Muslims. Many scholars have allowed it in the Middle East and in North Africa and the lands of the Muslims, whether it's for lesser of the 2 evils or whether it's because that this system of government has firmly planted its feet in the ground. The Islamic government, the Islamic Khilafah, the Islamic Shura is unfortunately in so many places, if not most places, shunned and abandoned and looked at as something evil or barbaric or medieval or archaic, etc. It's not the case. So many scholars, they've allowed that there in the lands in which the Muslims are dominant in a vast majority. So if some of them have allowed it there, then here in the West, womanish, bab awla. It'll take even more precedence and take even more permissibility, according to those ulama, as we said. Those scholars who have allowed that. So what's important is, in brief, Yahi, in brief, there are scholars who have allowed voting, and there's some scholars who have encouraged voting for Muslim minorities living in Western countries. And the only way in which they can get their rights, and the only way for them to get the basic necessary needs, let alone wants, of the civilization and the society in which they live is through voting. All right, so some scholars have allowed that. Of course, other scholars have said no. At the end of the day, it's like the previous question. It's mentioned that they were transgender. They had transplants, they had surgery, but you said that it gave birth to 2 children, not 1, but 2. So whether we like it or not, oh, that's disgusting, astaghfirullah, a'udhu billah, what's important is it what? It happened. And the same applies to living in this country. We can live in a fantasy world. We can live in a cosmetic, synthetic world. We can pretend and act like we're living in this land under this government and this type of caliphate. It's America. The Muslims live here. The Muslims die here. Babies are being born here. Muslims own. So for the Muslims to have no involvement in politics whatsoever, and for the Muslims to waste and to squander the leverage and the power of voting, absolutely, it's a bit much. That's a reach, that's a stretch. Okay, and whether you like it or not, politics are based off of benefit, pros and cons. And it's important to understand the nature of politics. There are no eternal or perpetual friends or enemies in politics. Don't ever forget that. No one is forever your friend, and no one is forever your enemy. You're my friend as long as it is beneficial. And you're my enemy. I hate you, and you're this, and you're that, and you're a terrorist, and you're this, as long as it isn't beneficial. The moment it is beneficial, now you're my ally. And we support you in freedom, except you have to understand the nature of politics. So what does a politician want? Politician wants to be in control. He wants power. He wants to be voted in. He wants. How many people are in this one building, this one room? So if he comes and says, look, you guys going to vote? What are we going to say? Get out the masjid, we're Muslims. Or what can you offer me? What can you give me? What are you going to do for my people? You're going to give us the Eid off, make it the Eid a national holiday? You're going to make zabiha meats in public schools? You're going to allow the adhan to be played out loud? You're going to stop harassing Muslims in the airport? You're going to do this, you're going to do that, you're going to do that? If you can promise me and guarantee 3 of these things, I'll give you 10,000 votes right now. 5,000 votes right now. I'm the leader. They'll follow me. The Muslims are going to ignore this, squander this, not use this? And what alternative do they have? What alternative is there? We're living in the United States. We're not living in some other fantasy land. This is the U.S. What better option is there? So this is the reason, or these are some of the reasons why certain scholars, I quote, if I don't want to say, oh, he said the voting is halal, you should vote for this. Certain scholars have allowed voting for Muslim minorities, especially living in Western countries. And Allah Azza wa Jalla surely knows best.
I have a question.
Wa yakum.
This will be the last question.
No,
So, living in like a distracted world where there's, social media, there's 100 things that people are involved in, where we're told to be mindful of Allah and to have taqwa in Allah. And, even like where we're told that we should worship Allah as if, we can see Him, even though we can't see Him. He can see us. What exactly does that mean? How can we apply that to our day-to-day, as like a college student? How do we best use that in our day-to-day
activities? So that's a very good question. The brother asks, how can we're told by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to be mindful of Him, to remember Him. We live in a distracted world. How can we be mindful of Him? Well, first of all, Akhi, one of the things I would say is you have to look at like your habits and your daily routine. And I would even suggest, Akhi, if you like jot it down, take notes, write it down, what you regularly do, and do that for like a week. Look at, okay, I go to work, I got classes, I study, I do this, I do that, and look at that, right? And once you do that, you kind of know, where things are, what you do and how you do it. And then when do you usually fall into something that distracts you or something that catches you? Then what you want to do is anything that's wasteful, anything that's harmful, you want to get rid of it. And one of the biggest things that you can add, which you need to have as a good habit, is actual dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, actual remembrances of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or like daily affirmations. One of the things that the Prophet ﷺ used to do is virtually for any occasion, and virtually at all times, there were prescribed and specific du'as to make, right? And so I would advise everybody here, if you don't have it, there's a book called, and I say it all the time, is Hisnul Muslim, right? Or the Fortress of the Muslim. If you're an Android user, there's an app for that. If it's Apple, there's an app for that, right? The Fortress of the Muslim. And what that does essentially is you daily, in different occasions, reminding yourself and affirming to yourself, that's why I said daily affirmations, reminding yourself about the oneness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, your reliance on Him, your commitment to Him. So for example, adhkar as-sabah, right? Allahumma bika asbahna, wa bika amsayna, wa bika nahya, wa bika namut, wa ilayka nushur. Right? You say, oh Allah, by you I've woken up and I raise every day. Bika asbahna, wa bika amsayna. And even when I go to sleep, it's by you. And by you we live, and by you we die. Wa ilayka nushur. And ultimately to you is my return. Now imagine, right, you're reminding yourself every day, dhikr, every day, that I wake up by you, O Allah, I go to sleep by you, I live by you, I die by you, and ultimately I'm returning to you. And you are reminding yourself of that every day. It's got to, right? And that helps in reminding us about our purpose in life. That's just one, right? Now in that book, you have several different reminders. And that's something we need to make as a habit, right? If you think about when you wake up and all those distractions, right? They're habitual. Right? Even the Sheikh, he mentioned, like, you wake up and what's the first thing most people do when they wake up? They check their phone. It's a habit. It's habitual. So you basically want to start replacing those negative habits with positive habits, right? And that's why I said, look at your day, you know what I'm saying? And then you start putting in those habits. But consistency is key, right? It's not even you doing a lot. Kama qala Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, right? Ahabbul a'mali ila Allah adwamuha wa in qall. That the most beloved actions to Allah are those that are consistent, even if it's something small. Because when you're consistent with something, it shows that you're serious to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It shows that it's not just this fleeting or passing thing. So that when I say, oh Allah, I wake up by you, and I go to sleep by you, and I live by you, and I die by you, and you say that every day, you are you're showing yourself, because Allah knows, right? But you're proving to yourself, I really mean this. That's why I'm committed to it. That's why I say this every morning, right? And then, of course, there's adhkar al-masa. Then there's remembrances in the evening. So actually, matter of fact, I would say I would break it down to that. Get that book and start with those two things. In the morning, adhkar al-sabah, which is after salat al-fajr, right? And adhkar al-masa, which is after salat al-maghrib, and starting with that. And even if well, of course you want to memorize it, but if you can't, just reading it off your phone. And reading off that little, y'all know the little orange book. Y'all know what I'm talking about, right? Everybody got, right? Anybody who's ever been to Dukes, knows that little book, right? If you don't have it, you need to get that book. But that will help you to remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? No. And obviously there's a bunch of other things that can be said about that, but I think that's a good starting point for anybody, no matter how old you are. Allahu Akbar. No.
Jazakallah khair, Sheikh Ilyas. Muslims are here to answer our questions. Brothers and sisters, I'd like to quickly explain roots, what it is. Many of you have never heard of us. We are new. Roots is an Islamic organization. Inshallah, is going to cultivate the next generation of youth and community leaders. Our goal is to equip the community with the necessary tools to navigate and deal with challenges portrayed in social and environmental issues. Through the following sub-programs, Roots of Knowledge. Inshallah, we're going to have more events, more classes, books to study under Shia, the student of knowledge. Roots companionship, inshallah, tackling social issues. Roots networking, inshallah, getting Islam out there through da'wah and many other things and connecting with messages. And Roots athletics, inshallah, creating a unity of brotherhood and sisterhood through activities and stuff like that. Before we leave, one thing, one of the brothers' dad, Abdullahi, asked to make dua for him. His dad is very sick and he's on life support right now. Inshallah, as a traveler, the dua of the traveler is never rejected. Inshallah, you can make dua for brother.
Can I say one thing first?
Fadl, Sheikh, by all means.
Inshallah, before the Sheikh makes dua, subhanallah, something that he mentioned earlier about this trials, fitan, shubuhat, shahawat, being such a deep, important topic that it really deserves more discussion and delving into and kind of like really picking that issue apart and what it means and how we can protect ourselves and so on and so forth. So I thought apropos, I wanted to mention two books that are available in English, again, that I think that everybody should get. One of the things that is extremely, extremely important for us Muslims is raising our literacy when it comes to Islam, right? And not simply relying on listening to YouTube videos and so on and so forth, but getting back to like reading. So the first book I wanted to mention is called Diseases of the Heart and Its Cures, which is by Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah. It is translated in English and it's widely available for purchase, Amazon and PDF, right? So you can also get it for free. And then the other one on this same topic is by his student, Imam Ibn al-Qayyim, Jawzi, rahimahullah, which is called, and actually he mentioned it, but he mentioned it in Arabic, Ad-Da wa Dawa, the diseases and its cure. The disease and its cure, right? And they delve into, subhanAllah, not just from a spiritual level, but almost like on a psychological level, about the ailments of human beings and the human condition, about its ongoing battle with the shaitan, and how to identify different types of hearts, the waswasa and the nafs, and those type of things, and how one can protect themselves and how one can prepare themselves for that battle with the shaitan. So, Diseases of the Heart and Its Cures by Imam Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah, and his student, The Disease and Its Cure by Imam Ibn al-Qayyim. Yeah, no. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept from all of us. Barakallahu feek.
Bidnillahi ta'ala, we'll make dua for both the brother who's fighting for his life and his family, his friends, and relatives. His father. Yeah, right. We ask Allah Azza wa Jal, first and foremost, we ask Allah to cure him and to give him a speedy recovery. As the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam would say, يعني شفاء لا يغادر سقما, a cure that leaves no trace of sickness and illness. That's what we ask Allah for this brother. We ask Allah by His beautiful names and His perfect attributes in this sitting and in this gathering of ours that we hope is a blessed gathering. Allahumma ameen. And we also make dua for him that it be a purification of his sins and a wiping away of his mistakes and errors and shortcomings. Allahumma ameen. And if it is not Allah's will not to cure him and not to give him shifa, we ask Allah Azza wa Jal to allow it to be a means of protection in the grave and a means of entrance into Jannah. Allahumma ameen. And we also ask Allah Azza wa Jal to make his family members, his children, his grandchildren to be patient and to be forbearant and to be perseverant upon Allah's decree. Allahumma ameen. And to keep them from saying or doing anything which is displeasing to Allah Azza wa Jal in this time of fitna, in this time of tribulation, them being tested with their grandfather being extremely ill and extremely sick, fighting for his life. Allahumma ameen. So that's what we say, noun. And even though I'm technically a traveler, I'm sitting still, I'm at a destination, and bi'idhnillahi ta'ala, by Allah's permission, when we actually get back on the road again and become a real traveler, we'll try our best to make more dua for him and for his family, inshallah ta'ala. Wallahu musta'an.
Jazakallah khairan, Mufti Munir, Sheikh Iyas. Inshallah, may Allah bless them for giving us that beneficial lecture. May Allah bless Al-Aman and Sheikh Mahmoud for allowing us to have this space. Inshallah, may Allah bless you guys for coming out here. And may Allah increase your efforts.
You got the text?
Ameen.
Alhamdulillah.
So
Got
that
you.
wrap